Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. We are going to have a great show. We're going to talk about it. And you know what? We're going to get into it in a manner that I hope, I read a piece this morning, and it was just kind of like wonderful, the piece that I read. And I said, this guy gets it. This guy gets it. Right now, the rave is people are scared that they're so scared. The masters of our economy are scared that people are starting to realize that somehow this economy is not working for most. And there are solutions to solve why this economy is not working for most. And you know what? That is our intent of this program today. What I want to do is I first want to go over in detail an article that I read earlier this morning. Actually, it was a wonderful article because what happened, my friends, is it was like, wait a minute. These are the things I've been talking about for a long time. For a very long time, we've been speaking about this. And finally, I found this author at The Guardian. And this author at The Guardian, he was so good in the way he expressed the entire issue. I mean, he kind of broke it down point for point. And that is pretty much what we're going to do today. But before we get into the well, you know what? Let me do this. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to first get into the program. After I get into the program, I'm going to play a piece by Anand Giridharadas. I don't never say his name quite correctly. I'm going to get into that and play that for you because it's an important piece that he did today on the one of the MSNBC shows that I think that bears talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the show and talk about what it's going to be first of all. The title of the show today is, Can Democrats Talk About Capitalism Not Working and Still Win? Again, that's a very important question. It is a question we have got to answer before we get deep into talking economic issues. You know, I mean, Bernie Sanders is, of course, continuously talks about these issues, and a lot of people try to get him to be somewhat quiet. Why do they want him to be quiet? They want him to be quiet because they think Americans are going to associate any kind of change in the economy as a problematic issue. How can that be a problematic issue when people are suffering? How can that be a problematic issue when people look at their bank accounts and see, oh my God, do I really have what it takes to make it through retirement? Am I ever going to be able to retire? Is this a society that is constantly going to keep me at risk, worrying, stressed out because I just don't know my economic future? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how do you really build an economic future? How do you really ensure that your society, that what you support is there? The first thing that you have to get over, folks, is fear. That is the first thing you're going to have to get over, and we'll talk about that. Anyhow, the title of the show is, Can Democrats Talk About Capitalism Not Working and Win? The subtitle is, if we did not give economic systems names, everyone would say that a system that fails at least 80% is a failure. That is our system, and it is called capitalism. Let's make America smart again. The powers are trying to scare Democrats into towing the line. Do not go to progressives, or do not go too progressive, or you will lose. They forget that they said similar things about Donald Trump. And guess what? He won. Donald Trump won by telling Americans a whole lot of what they already knew. Their lives were screwed up. And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about just here and there, people's lives were in dire straits. And he got it. He got it. And when he got it, he said, you know what he said? He said, you know what, we're going to do something about it. Of course, he was lying, but he gave people what Obama gave them in 2008. Enough people, that is, he gave in 2008 when he said, I am going to make healthcare better for you. I'm going to do all these other things that were better for you. We knew he was lying, but he said it was going to do it. And he didn't have anybody to say, well, that's not realistic. He just plowed on. They did not mind that too much because they knew he would just become a useful tool. So the plutocracy, they supported and they continued playing with Donald Trump because they knew that Donald Trump, if he ever got into the White House, would be nothing but a tool, which, I mean, it's turning out exactly that way. He's a very good tool for the plutocracy, no doubt about it. So he became the tool. And the truth of the matter is they don't mind. I played a video a few weeks ago where it came out on Morning Joe. One of the guys said, and this was kind of scary when he said it, right? He said, if Bernie Sanders or one of these progressives are the ones who the Democrats elected, the ones who the Democrats chose to be the nominee of the party, he would vote for Donald Trump again. And that was a supposedly progressive Democrat speaking on Morning Joe. So you see where their heads are at, where their heads are. They did not mind that too much because they knew he would just be a useful tool. But imagine if the country forgot about indoctrination necessary to support capitalism, an antiseptic form of slavery, and elected an Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders with a horde of progressives. The plutocracy would finally have to earn its keep. Read, it could not survive as is. Why is that? When I say the plutocracy has to earn its keep, I remember Mitt Romney used to love talking about the 47%, the people who don't work. He used to love it, right? Little does he know, or he should know because he's one of them, the people that work the least in this country are those who have everybody else working for them. That's capitalism. The people that work the least are the ones who have everybody else working for them. Don't you ever forget it, and don't you ever sit back thinking somehow that because you are working for them while they sit their butts down in a comfortable chair, air-conditioned and otherwise, that they are better than you are. Because what they are is truly your master. And what's the other end of the master again? So please, brothers and sisters, my goal with politics done right is to reframe our minds, to reframe our worth, our self-worth, to reframe who we are, to reframe what we're worth, and to reframe what we demand, to reframe all of it. Because it took a very long time. It took a very long time for us to lose it. It took a very long time for them to convince us that the ones who did all of the work weren't the ones who deserved the spoils. That the one who that brought the intellect wasn't necessarily the ones that were going to benefit. That the ones who create wasn't necessarily the ones who would succeed. But that is what we say must end. And it ends when we evolve into an economy made from sound solutions. Interestingly, today there was a discussion on one of the MSNBC programs in the morning, and it had to do with whether Democrats can win if they just outwardly talk about capitalism as a problem. And it was great to see Anand, and I can't say the name correctly, Giradadis, come out there and hold his ground and tell the truth as the truth should have been told. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to play that, and we'll take it on the other side.
We ended up with President Trump. All of these issues, that status quo not working for a large portion of this country, voters said, I need something different. Joe Biden is now jumping in the race. And based on that message, it seems that he's saying, listen, Donald Trump is this moment in time. We don't want to have this moment go on any longer. Let's go back to the way things were.
So profoundly true. That video was an edit undo. The whole entirety of it was Trump is the problem. And I think Trump is a really big problem. That said, I think Trump is the kind of problem that is a symptom, right? Trump is a boil on your body that is actually a clue that you have a really big problem. You have some disease that you haven't gotten diagnosed. And if you say that the premise seemed to be things were great in America, and then Trump got in and besmirched the character of our country and made things ugly.
Except things were broken in America.
Who's the only person in this race who can't say that is Joe Biden, because he was vice president for the preceding 8 years that launched us into Trump. So he is actually the person least able to tell the truth in this Democratic primary about the fact that there were conditions of inequality, of anger, of dispossession, of rising racial resentment.
Joe Biden and Barack Obama don't own that. Inequality is a massive problem around the world. It's not unique to the United States.
You're absolutely right, but here's one way in which they do. I think part of what is actually happening, the subtext is Democratic primaries. There's a reappraisal of the Obama years going on quietly when you talk to these campaigns, and I think there's a realization that Barack Obama was an extraordinary man, a person of great character, a person who did a lot of great things, a person who was incredibly hamstrung, but on the fundamental question of changing who has power in American life, changing whether capitalism is creating mobility or not.
But he wasn't handed a healthy economy. He was taking us out of a car
Barack Obama is not as politically aggressive as many of the people running for the Democratic primary. And I don't think Barack Obama made it his point to fundamentally change power equations in this country in 8 years. And I think we're going to have a referendum on maybe Joe Biden continuing that approach, and others saying we're going to keep getting Trump-like figures over the next 30 to 40 years if we don't fundamentally change how America's working and who it's working for. And the next time we may get a Donald Trump, it actually may be someone who can read.
The next time we get another Donald Trump, it just may be someone who can read. And what does he exactly mean by that? What he means is Donald Trump is a buffoon right now. So, I mean, there's not much that he can accomplish. But suppose it was that Donald Trump wasn't. Then think about what we have. But anyhow, one of the things that this discussion came about was with whether having Biden as the new representative of the Democratic Party and being the front runner means anything. And, I had somebody tell me yesterday, if Joe Biden comes in and Joe Biden really, the Democratic establishment forces him to win somehow, then it would be Hillary Clinton all over again. Well, my contention is that it would be worse than Hillary Clinton all over again, because I think there's a whole lot more negatives that they can pull up on Mr. Biden. I mean, yes, they can say, oh, he worked for Obama, but there is so much there in 2020 that will come out as far as that would make him seem like a troglodyte in 2020, unlike many of the other contenders, vis-a-vis Elizabeth Warren, vis-a-vis Kamala Harris, and even my good friend Bernie Sanders. Now, we have to realize one thing. The biggest problem and the big undercurrent in this entire debate is the economy. The economy is currently being spun as being flying on all cylinders. It's running perfectly so. And I'm glad for that, right? Because if the economy is, if we are at full employment, if the economy is working fine, it is booming, all of those things according to the numbers are true. You must ask yourself a very specific question. If that is true, why aren't most Americans not just making it, but flourishing, but building up their wealth, building up their equities in properties and all these other things? And with a big, booming, full economy, that is not happening. So the question becomes, if in a booming economy that cannot happen, and the economy only has one place to go after it has boomed, what does that tell you about your future? What does that tell you about where we're going? What does that tell you about an economic system that functions like this? And that is how the economic system functions now. And that is how a mature capitalist economy has to function numerically by design. And we're going to go into this article as far as capitalism now. And I want you to listen keenly. I also would love for you to share this a whole lot, because this is important, brothers and sisters. We have to change the paradigm. We have to change. We have to change how people think, because we have been so indoctrinated into thinking that this is the way things are, this is the way they will be, and this is the way they must be. Let's get over that. And the way we get over that is self-worth and understanding how things really, really work. So we're going for the blog of the week. And do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, the title of the piece, and let me bring that up here. The title of the piece is "The Death of Capitalism is Existential, but What is to Replace It?" Again, repeating, the death of capitalism is existential, but what is there to replace it? Is that really the question? And it goes as follows. As a former owner of a successful software company who made his income by selling to capitalist corporations, most of the crony capitalism type, understanding why this economic structure is fatal to most came very, very easily. Being brave enough to articulate that reality was less straightforward because of my former indoctrination and that of those who surrounded me. So you think about it. We're all indoctrinated to some extent, and I'm telling you, I was just like anybody else. I alluded to my naivete in my book, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, when taking my economic class, supply and demand coupled with greed, even absent scarcity, befuddled me. In other words, even back in college when I took Economics 101, and we started to talk about how it functioned, there was just something in there that was so inhumane to me. I remember one time when the professor said, "Egberto, if a lot of people want this widget, and I can make a whole ton of them, and the demand for this widget just keeps increasing, what happens to the price?" In my naivete, I was like, "You mean and you can continue to make a whole lot of them?" Yeah. In other words, there's no scarcity? Yeah. What happens to the price? The price zooms up. Scarcity or not, people want it, I make it. And and then he tried to say, but competition would eventually come in when the price goes up and other people will join into the market and all of that. And then we went through a whole lot of things, how competition really doesn't always work that way. I mean, if we have certain commodities and so forth that only a few people can get to, there ain't no competition. So, I mean, the system has always befuddled me. But I understand it completely, but it still befuddled me. This morning, I read a great article in The Guardian by George Monbiot titled, "Dare to Declare Capitalism Dead Before It Takes Us All Down with It." It is one of the better articles that I have read on why capitalism must end sooner rather than later. And folks, I know how a lot of people think it's blasphemy. A lot of people think it is crazy. A lot of people think, oh, you must be a communist. And 973, I'm coming to you next. A lot of people think maybe you are a communist, or no, that's not it. Look, and I say this not just to say, well, look at who I am or whatever. But I am a mechanical engineer by training from the University of Texas. All I care about are numbers. Numbers, equations, and how they fulfill themselves, how they limit themselves. That was my training. That was my education. Numbers. I wonder why sometimes the business folks shouldn't also take some engineering courses in knowing that there are certain things that are absolute. Like, it is absolute that capitalism is going to fall on its face, and we have to decide how to make it happen, because it will consume absolutely everything. By design, you cannot have infinite growth. By design, brothers and sisters, it has to fail. When and how, we don't know, but it has to fail. The numbers says it. And don't believe anything you hear on CNBC. They are not very smart. They follow charts. And they follow charts without the science. But capitalism and the form in which it works, it cannot survive from a numerical standpoint, and we can go over that some other time. Monbiot first shows the tension within himself, the tension he felt when the truth hit him. He wrote the following, quote, "For most of my adult life, I've railed against corporate capitalism, consumer capitalism, and crony capitalism. It took me a long time to see that the problem is not the adjective but the noun. While some people have rejected capitalism gladly and swiftly, I've done so slowly and reluctantly." Close quote. But it is a subsequent paragraph that I believe will make it easier for others to come to the correct realization of the fatality of capitalism without fearing some negative label. You see, people in this society, they are so scared. If you say, you notice every time somebody went to Morning Joe's show, the first thing they ask, are you a capitalist? They ask every Democratic candidate, are you a capitalist? And all of them either put their tails between their nose and try to change the way they answer it, or they just come out and say, oh, yes, I'm a capitalist, but things are hard for people right now. We want to change it. Elizabeth Warren came out and said, I give Elizabeth Warren a pass, okay? She came out and said, I'm a capitalist. And then she said then she went ahead and said all the things that she wanted to do, which ensured that what she wanted wasn't capitalism, but something else, something with solutions, something that gave people what their due was, and something that prevented the economic criminals from succeeding. Okay? So his subsequent paragraph, the subsequent paragraph, I believe, will prevent you from feeling that negative label. And he said as follows, quote, "As I've grown older, I've come to recognize two things. First, that it is the system rather than any variant of the system that drives us inexorably towards disaster. Second, that you do not have to produce a definite alternative to say that capitalism is failing. The statement stands in its own right, but it also demands another and different effort to develop a new system." What does that really mean? That means it is okay to tell the truth. The system is failing. The system has failed. Do we know exactly what a new system would be? No. I mean, Bernie wants to call it democratic socialism. I call it democratic socialism because even that has to be defined. But you don't have to call it anything. You just have to put in the pieces as Elizabeth Warren is doing. What Elizabeth Warren did is Elizabeth did the two-step. Elizabeth Warren said, oh, I'm a capitalist. And then she goes ahead and say all the things she wants to do to ensure that capitalism isn't capitalism. Okay? That is what actually happened. Now, close quote, because we don't have the new system. Monbiot recognized the poison that drives capitalism and its effects. I want you to listen to the poisons. This is important. And he says as follows. Capitalism's failure arise from two of its defining elements. And what are those? The first is perpetual growth. Economic growth is the aggregate effect of the quest to accumulate capital and extract profit. Capitalism collapses without growth, yet perpetual growth on a finite planet leads inexorably to environmental calamity. But it's worse than that. Perpetual growth is simply an impossibility. It's an impossibility. It is like you own a grocery store, and people buy stocks in your grocery store. And in a perfect world, you'll have people that may have ownership in your store, and a certain percentage of that profit just go to these people. Let's say that the profit margin that we say in groceries should be 3%, and it's always 3%. But that's not what capitalism dictates. Capitalism dictates an ever-growing amount of profit in such a manner that eventually the stock price increases. So in effect, they're looking for perpetual growth, and perpetual growth means perpetual price increases. It's like what happens in healthcare, right? We know that insulin never went up in price, but every year, because they need perpetual growth, they increase arbitrarily the price of insulin because you have to have it, and their shareholders need a return. So to do that, they have pricing power, and they need to pay their shareholders. And where do they get the money to pay their shareholders? From you. You have their prices have not increased. The only thing is those shareholders drinking wine at their pool says we must have a perpetual return on our investment, and to do so, we need to get that money. And how do we get that growth? We get it from you. So you pay. I have pricing power. You don't. You pay. You never grow. That's what it's all about. They don't tell it. They don't speak to it that way, right? But until we begin to tell people the truth of how this system works, they sit down and they buy the Kool-Aid and say, oh yeah, capitalism, it has been making people rich all along. The second, a system based on perpetual growth cannot function without peripheries and externalities. There must always be an extraction zone from which materials are taken without full payment, and a disposal zone where costs are dumped in the form of waste and pollution. You may ask the question, what does he mean? There must be an extraction without full payment. You know why it's without full payment? Because you need profit, and profit comes from two things: value added and what is not paid. In other words, the guy who gets the raw material, what is not paid to you is his profit, who's selling that raw material to the person who's going to add value. And then the person who adds value, well, then that is his profit, the value he adds. And then he doesn't give all the value that he's added because he then steals it from the workers, who don't get a piece of the extra value created. They just get some fixed amount they've agreed to get as wages. It is, look, if it weren't legal, it would be a criminal enterprise. Okay? As the scale of economic activity increases until capitalism affects everything, from the atmosphere to the deep sea ocean, the entire planet becomes a sacrifice zone. We all inhabit the periphery of the profit-making machines. If you doubt that reality, look at the Pacific Ocean. There is a part, I think it's the Pacific Ocean, there's a ring where all the disposable plastic from all our waste is circulating. It's infesting the bodies of whales, infesting the bodies of sharks and every animal possible. It's finding an integral part into their inner beings of these mammals that eventually in the food chain comes right back to us. So it kills us. We don't see it because, again, like I said, capitalism, antiseptic form of slavery, antiseptic form of killing, antiseptic form of doing everything because we know how to do it now with class. We know how to do it now with class. Close quote. But most importantly, he identifies the intrinsic immorality that is integral to the system, and it is the bizarre assumption that a person is entitled to as great a share of the world's natural wealth as their money can buy. This seizure of common goods causes three further dislocations. First, the scramble for exclusive control of non-reproducible assets, which implies either violence or legislative truncations of other people's rights. I can tell you what happened in other countries when we go ahead and take. Second, the immiseration of other peoples by an economy based on looting across both space and time. Ask Jamaica about their bauxite. Ask Panama about their copper. Ask all these other countries about what's been taken. Ask Venezuela about its oil. Third, the translation of economic power into political power, as control over essential resources leads to control over the social relations that surround them. And how else can we manifest that when the edict of the United States is that anybody who messes with the flow of oil is in effect, it presents itself as a clear and present danger to the United States of America, who then will respond. Monbiot will go on to say that many would attack because they make the claim that capitalism has brought many out of poverty. But one must place that statement in context, as he eloquently points out. He says, quote, "It is true that capitalism and the economic growth it drives has radically improved the prosperity of vast numbers of people while simultaneously destroying the prosperity of many others, those whose land, labor, and resources were seized to fuel growth elsewhere. Much of the wealth of rich nations was and is built on slavery and colonial expropriation. Like coal, capitalism has brought many benefits, but like coal, it now causes more harm than good. Just as we have found means of generating useful energy that are better and less damaging than coal, so we need to find means of generating human well-being that are better and less damaging than capitalism." I always tell people who love to tell me things like, oh, but look at how great capitalism is, because have you gone to downtown Houston? Have you gone to downtown New York City? Look at all those nice, great, wonderful, beautiful, beautiful buildings. Look at those great bridges. To which I always have one answer. And how much of this are you privy to? And how much of this can you actually use? How much of this really influences you? How much of this can you use? Not very, very much. And that is what we have to teach people. That what they're doing is they're fighting for something they've never had. They're fighting for something that they've never profited from. Most people, that is. Of course, notice I've placed in here 80%. Until we understand these realities, we will never move forward as individuals within the society. Now, the following is the message those of us who know capitalism is destroying us, but understand that most Americans are made to fear its alternative, must be fluent and ready to explain. And it goes as follows. There is no going back. The alternative to capitalism is neither feudalism nor state communism. Soviet communism had more in common with capitalism than the advocates of either system would care to admit. Both systems are or were obsessed with generating economic growth. Both are willing to inflict astonishing levels of harm in pursuit of this and other ends. Both promised a future in which we would need to work for only a few hours a week, but instead demand endless, brutal labor. Both are dehumanizing. Both are absolutist, insisting that theirs and theirs alone is the one true God. Close quote. Instead of always identifying some replacement-ism, maybe it is time that we simply speak solutions. And that is the sole purpose of politics done right. Solutions, solutions, solutions. 973, you are on the air.
Egberto, how are you today? It's Johnny.
Hey, Johnny, talk to me, my brother.
I was loving everything you said today, and I love the fact that you have this bend toward engineering and science, and I actually believe that the solution for what we're looking for will be found in the scientific realm. I actually believe that. And interestingly, one of the things I'd first like to say is, one, when people talk about money, just quick, the law of conservation of energy, matter can neither be created nor destroyed, just changed in different forms. And it's the same thing with money. It cannot be created or destroyed, but simply transferred. So I think people have to remember that. And then the other thing I would like to remind people from a scientific standpoint is that homogeny is a precursor event to extinction.
Wow.
So in other words, my Caucasian brothers and sisters have to remember, the closer we get to homogenizing our society, the closer we get to an extinction event. And so I think from that standpoint, people have to kind of wise up a little bit. Now, the one area that I would say people have to look at is you look at gut bacteria. The reason why your gut operates so wonderfully is because you have all different types of bacteria in your gut competing for resources. And once one type of bacteria is able to overtake the others, that throws the whole system out of whack. And so what I'm saying is that when I took economics so many moons ago, one of the things they talked about was that the driving force behind economics was that each company was trying to maximize profit. But this is no longer the case. It's no longer about maximizing profit. Now it's about eliminating competition. And so I would say that we have to actually, if we're going to fix our capitalistic structure, I feel like we're going to have to do what we would do with a type of infection. We have to bring back competition. So this idea that companies like Google and Apple and AT&T can basically run their companies without any competition is going to only lead to one thing: no competition. They've eliminated the competition, so basically they've homogenized our society. It can only go one way. We have to reintroduce competition. And that's really the question. And so I know from all these, people out there that are like staunch capitalists. And it's funny because I always joke with my Republican friends. I say to them, you can't really be a Republican unless you have like $10 million in the bank. So you're not really a Republican. You're kind of delusional.
Exactly.
But I'm digressing. But the point is that I believe that we actually do have solutions here. And the solution is, if we're going to stay with this capitalism thing, and I'm not sure that we can, because Marx said that at the end point, capitalism would devour itself. And we did see the fall of communism, quote unquote, by Reagan, which I questioned at the time, but, apparently communism fell. The wall fell and communism died.
Well, it happened under his administration, but it was long fallen, and every single American president had something to do with it.
Agreed. And I also heard that the space race, the whole point of us going to the moon was to bankrupt the Russians, to force them to try to keep up with us, and they couldn't keep up with us and basically bankrupted their economy by trying to keep up.
And not only that, both the space race and the arms race was really to bankrupt them, because the truth of the matter is our capitalist economy was a lot more functional than their communist economy or controlled economy. So, I am not an advocate of a controlled economy. Go ahead.
But why? Because their communist setup, there was no competition.
Right. Look, you don't have to convince me. I'm with you.
Oh, I know you're with me. I know. I'm talking about the people who aren't on board yet, because we're headed for an extinction event. This homogenization of our culture, of these companies. This is only going to go one way. And by the way, as an engineer, the taller you build a building, the wider you need the base to be.
Oh, yeah.
And so this idea of widening the base, sharing resources, there's strength in diversity. See, diversity isn't something, you're not doing a favor to quote-unquote minorities by letting us participate in this economy. You're actually making your structure stronger by diversifying it, making it harder to knock out, by keeping it from being homogenized. And so I would just say to my capitalistic Republican friends who believe in extraction and extracting all the wealth and then dumping all of the drain off into minority communities, I would just say to them, you got to wise up. We have to wise up.
Absolutely.
And it's crazy because
yeah, go ahead.
It's crazy because we were told, we've been fed a number of different lies. The lie of my generation was, go to school and you will succeed. So even though as a young black male, I could look and see, well, things are not fair, and how are you going to put us into these academic environments when there's no black professors, there's no black administration, and then expect us to succeed? That seems almost unfair. Meanwhile, other communities are able to kind of get through. Now, I would just point to everybody and simply say, America is actually, I feel like, stronger now culturally because we've actually done a really good job of integrating our base. But at the same time, though, Egberto, it's very odd to me. It's very odd to me that we have a bunch of people coming into this country. Let's just focus on South America for 1 second. Let's say South America. They come to this country, and you would think they would want to be Democrats. but they come to this country and they're conservative. They want to be Republican. And it's the same thing for the Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting to me, like the system that helped them come into the country was put in place by people of color, by people who have struggled against the machine. And as soon as they get to this country, oh, hey, I'm a Republican. Huh?
Well, let me tell you what happens. Is let me explain a few things, Johnny, and that a lot of it is human behavior, right? I mean, if you notice, I don't know if you listened to my show yesterday. I had a piece that I did where I said, it was a piece that I was trying to bring unity, and I said that a lot of people have this feeling of saying, at least I am not them. And we keep that.
Yes!
We keep that in the back of many people keep that in the back of their heads. Whereas at least I'm not them. So you can screw them. You can do all kind of bad things to them as long as they have somebody that they can look as beneath them. Then things are basically okay. So what a lot of foreigners come over here and learn is, for the longest time, black people in America, and I'm talking about black Americans, have been made that people that at least I'm not. So you'd even see black folk coming from other countries. I'm from Panama. I'm from Central America. You see black folks coming from other country, and somehow the plutocracy in its narrative would look at you and say, well, you are not them. And even when I went to the University of Texas, the first place I joined was something called the Afro-American Culture Committee. And the blacks in the Afro-American Culture Committee treated me initially as an aside until I explained that I don't think first of all, the most amount of black folk in this entire hemisphere is south of the border. It's not America. It's Brazil.
That's true.
It is
Yes.
Cuba. It is
Brazil.
Dominican Republic, and we can go on and on. Panama, all these other places. When you add the aggregate amount of these folks, it's way exceed what's in the United States. But what's funny is until I reminded them that no pleasure ship came across the Atlantic Ocean. These were all slave ships that came across the Atlantic Ocean. So right from the tip of Argentina all the way to the top of Canada. Thank you very much. We are all we were just dropped off in different places, and I had to teach a whole lot of that not only to my American brothers and sisters, but to my Latin American brothers and sisters and my Caribbean brothers and sisters. Because one thing I believe in that we should all be together, and that's I'm not only talking about my black brothers and sisters. I'm talking about my white brothers and sisters. I'm talking about my Latino brothers and sisters.
Agreed.
We have
Cooperation
to learn.
is the only way forward.
We have to learn. We have to learn what it's all about, and we have to learn how we are being played. Because if we don't learn it, this stuff, it eats us raw. And that is what Politics Done Right is all about. We want to make sure that people are informed. Go ahead, Johnny.
But you specifically asked for solutions, and I just wanted to say that, we have to figure out a way to introduce competition back in from a corporate structural standpoint. There's no competition for these companies anymore. I mean, I don't understand how all this is supposed to keep going when competition has been virtually eliminated. Like Jeff Bezos no longer cares about competition. He just devours other companies. And so I don't understand how this is going to stand. I don't know how capitalism can go when only like 20 people are going to run and own everything.
And that is what Elizabeth Warren. That is why I am. First of all, I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter, but I'm slowly.
Interesting.
I was a Bernie Sanders delegate in Philly back in 2016. But my thing is, I am really getting acclimated. Well, I've always been acclimated to Elizabeth Warren, but she's a very close second. Looking to be overpassing pretty soon.
Yes, she's very interesting right now.
Because what I'm seeing from her is she is bringing solutions. We talk about solutions, right? And what I'm saying is she goes out and because she doesn't want to have to answer the capitalism question, she goes out and she says, I'm a capitalist, but this is what I want to do. She wants to pay off all the student loans for 95% of the people. Ultimately, it's what it's going to become. She also wants to ensure that we have a living wage. She also wants to ensure all these things that she's promoting is anathema to capitalism. But she's a capitalist, so I think she is the one that has found the sweet spot. In effect, the part that I don't like is that it's a somewhat dishonest sweet spot, because she understands that unless the American population is educated, she can't say where she's really coming from. The reality is she can't go out there and say capitalism by design is a failure. You cannot, I mean, and you know,
Yes.
I always use a simple numerical thing to point that out, and that is if the economy is growing at 2.5% and capitalists are growing at 8% or 10% or 15%, that growth in a closed system is coming from somewhere. It is coming from everybody else.
Yep.
And guess what? For those who
Exactly.
ever doubted that, and it's just a math problem, right? And for those who ever doubted
Yep.
that, they simply need to look at your bank account. Look at your family's bank account.
Yes.
Look at the assets
Agreed.
they have. And so the answers are right there for people to see. But what we have is smoke and mirrors from the Plutocracy to tell you, don't look there. Look at that black boy. Look at that Latino boy. Look at
Yeah.
that Asian boy. That's your
Exactly.
problem. And if we stop people from doing that, and I did a piece yesterday on my show, or not yesterday, on Tuesday on my show, and while I'm talking to you, I'm going to try to see if I still have it on the computer, that I can bring it up and play it for our people. Because after I played that piece, uploaded it to YouTube, a woman came out and said, and you could see that based on her tonality, you could see that this woman was likely I don't know, maybe a Trump supporter or something. And
Right.
the message she sent me after she saw the video was, "You've just changed this 68-year-old white woman," and that was her response to that thing that I did. I'm going to try to put it on here. I think I found it. I'm going to play it right now for folks to hear it, because
Thank you, Professor Egberto, and I am out of here. But I just want to tell you, keep going on what you're doing.
Thank
You're
you so
hitting the sweet
you
spot.
so kindly, Johnny. You have a wonderful day. Okay.
Take care, Professor.
Take care now. Bye-bye. All right, folks, I just want to play you one thing here, and this came from, this is something that I built, and I got some good responses first, so I figured let me go ahead and do it again, and then I'll go into my ass. But this is what I did, and I put up on YouTube yesterday, and to pretty good avail. So here we go, and it goes like this. A few years ago, I wrote a blog. I got in trouble with the black intelligentsia because there was an economist, he went on a show in England, and he said, whites are the new blacks now. And oh my God, I went ahead and reposted that, and I wrote an entire blog about it because I concurred with the economists in England. I said the reason that we could have an economy that hurts a few and then hurts the very many is because we have people believing they are a cut above. But what happens when Americans start to realize the truth, that they are no different than those people they thought at least we were not them? What happens then? Right now, the plutocracy is still trying to get around that, right? There we have Trump. Trump is xenophobic. Trump is racist. Trump is all these things because he knows if he can keep your eye against each other, that now, guess what? We can hold on to this plutocracy a bit longer. We can continue to hurt the entire country, the middle class, and keep the wealth for a few for a lot longer. So we do that. So my phrase that I use all the time, I love everybody. Until we unite Appalachia, the ghettos and the barrios, they win. My Trump brothers and sisters, I love you. Let's talk. Progressives that don't like to hang with those folks, love them. Talk. Centrist Democrats that need an awareness that aren't the establishment, let's talk. Because, folks, we're not going to change this country until we change minds, until we change the indoctrination that was created by the Powell Manifesto to keep our minds enslaved. Okay, I thought I had a call, but I thought I had a call. 612, you can call us back. 612, you can call us back, and I'll get you on right away. 612. Okay, let me see real quickly here. Oh, I haven't asked about my book. All right. Anyhow, folks, please support Politics Done Right. You can do so by going to patreon.com/politics done right. Again, that is patreon.com/politics done right. I would appreciate if you'll if you go to that site and support what we are trying to do here. We are not trying to do anything other than to make the lives of everybody else better. 612, you are on. 612, come on in. 612, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Hi, what up, my nigga?
Oh, wow. Anything else you want to add to that, my friend? That's it. Well, I guess that's all he had to say. He wanted to call and use a slur against me. Oh my God. I am so terrified now. I am so terrified. Anyhow, folks, please support Politics Done Right by going to patreon.com/Politics Done Right. That is patreon.com/Politics Done Right. And what we do is all our books are online and you have an ability to read them all. You know, without your support, we simply cannot continue doing what we do. I thank all of those that are current supporters of Politics Done Right. I am trying to get my Patreon list up, or rather my Patreon group up to over, we actually need about 1,000 something on the Patreon group. Right now we're only, I think, at 89 or something. Why don't you guys help me get to, let's say, 100 this week? Again, that is Patreon, patreon.com/Politics Done Right. And you get a chance to read my entire book, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. And of course, I've told you several times about Lose Weight and Be Fit Now. After having some very high blood pressure and high poundage, I went ahead and did this and was successful in keeping it off for quite a while, keeping it off permanently now. And I kind of give you a bit of how I do this. By the way, all of these you can also find at Amazon.com. And of course, the book that I'm currently writing, How to Make America Utopia, have chapter 1 and chapter 2 online. I'm working on chapter 3. I'm trying like hell to get that one out. And I'm going to try to speed this stuff up, but there's so much happening that we have to take care of. Bear with us as we do it. But we do need your support. We're going to be heading off to Philly for the net route sometime in the summer. We're going to be heading off in several places, and we really do need your support. We also need some equipment, so we may actually have a capital GoFundMe for that sometime in the near future that we're going to be asking some folks to support as well. Again, folks, please go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right. Now, I hope you enjoy what we had to say about this topic on capitalism. Let me go ahead and see what my good friends on the network are saying now. Let's go ahead and load comments. I needed to salute all my friends. Michael Rudnin, welcome aboard. All my good friends. Let's see. Daniel Ledo, my good conservative friend. How are you doing, my friend? Michael Grassi, welcome aboard. Let's see who else is here. We also have, Mike Cisak is here. And there are quite a few others that I missed. Michael Dean Newton, welcome aboard. And I saw Sally Salas. I saw Kathleen. Who else I saw? Anyway, you have to bear with me with the way I scroll down with these things. It's not as efficient as I would like it to be. I wish they had a better messaging system. Let's see. Please start with the name of the article. By the name you start talking about it, I'll have skimmed a few paragraphs. Oh, sorry about that, Michael Rudden. I saw your message too late to do that. When 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, capitalism isn't working. That is true. Para ver. Did I mishear? Morning Joe is a moderate conservative, not a progressive. Always surprised me that he's on MSNBC. No, I don't think I said he was a progressive. I said the person on his show was a progressive. It wasn't Morning Joe who said it, Michael Rudnin. Okay, Egbert, please link that MSNBC video when you get a chance. Actually, I did it on a show before. I'll try to go ahead and find it. But if not, you can also find it in my YouTube machinations because I actually have it linked in the YouTube. But I'll try to find that link for you, Michael Rideau. Befuddle, I don't think the word means what you think it means. Actually, I do think it means what I think it means, Mr. Ledo. Quite well. Mr. Ledo says, EW is lying and you admire that. Says something about your character. I'm lying. What am I lying about? Let's see what he says I'm lying about. Okay, Daniel, so to proclaim you are a capitalist and then put forward policies that are anything but capitalist is not a lie. Is that what you're telling me? Wait a minute. No, I said they can define it however they want. They can say capitalism, but, and if you notice what I said was capitalism, but is how Elizabeth Warren says it. She wants to do it that way. I am kind of with Mr. Ledo here, but I understand the reason for them or for many doing it. But Mr. Ledo in this case about somebody saying they're a capitalist and then passing policies that really aren't necessarily that of a capitalist, for me it's like, let me tell you how I justify it though, Mr. Ledoux. And it goes as follows. If I see somebody murdering you or coming to murder you, Mr. Ledoux, and I can look at that person and say, hey, I love murdering, but that is not the best person to murder. It's a stupid example, but I'm just trying to show what I mean. I would go ahead and do that. In other words, if I have to save your life, Mr. Ledoux, and I have to lie to save your life, Mr. Ledoux, I'd do it. Elizabeth Warren is trying to save the lives of many, and she may have to kind of fib a bit to do so because people are indoctrinated and don't get it. So, you're right, but what can I say? Anyhow, we're here at the end of the show. I want to do one last ask and say, folks, please go ahead and consider becoming a member of Politics Done Right. Please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Please become a subscriber. We need them badly. And we really need them badly. This project of attempting to be one cog in a ton of cogs we want to have to really inform our base, to really inform Americans, to really inform the voting population is something that we think we must do. Because we know the mainstream media cannot do it because they serve another master. We serve you. This is your show, and that is why we ask for your support. So please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end it. I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3.